Welcome to Faith on Film with Isaac Hernandez and Holly McClure. Keeping you informed on faith and family entertainment.
Hi, Holly. I have a feeling you are going to love today's show. Have you ever been to Ireland, by the way?
You know, Isaac, I have not. And my name is McClure, and I did the whole genealogy thing, and I know I have Irish and Scottish, mostly Irish, in me. So I want to go, but I've never been. It's on my bucket list.
It's on your bucket list. Well, I figured you would enjoy today's show because our guest today, even though I don't think she's of Irish descent, but she apparently just knows all about the whole Celtic culture.
And Wales and
Scotland and all that. And I figured with a name like McClure, you would really enjoy today's show because she has just produced a documentary, by the way, called Celtic Rhythms, which explores just the through music and by the way, beautiful scenery, the whole culture of worship during the Dark Ages, actually. Now, she is an author, a film producer, a speaker, a teacher, a cabin hostess, and an adventurer, has been in full-time ministry for over 18 years, ministering both locally and internationally, and her films have been shown on every major English-speaking TV network in the world, including TBN, Daystar, God TV. I mean, that's pretty much all the big ones, isn't it? And Pureflix and more. But you know what? Before we bring her on, because I know we're going to have a wonderful time talking to her, but let's take a look at the trailer for that documentary that she produced called Celtic Rhythms.
This land has a voice, and it's ready to speak. Buried by history, the treasures of the early Celtic saints are just as precious today as they were 1,500 years ago.
There are more saints from Irish history and the early Celtic church than the rest of church history put together. And it's been said that the early Celtic church was most like the first century church in practice and in demonstration of supernatural power as they lived out the gospel of Christ.
As we look for clues to unpack this ancient history, we'll leave the beaten path and familiar roads to visit the highlands and islands that hold keys to unlock Celtic mysteries. We'll discover facts and legends, stories and heroes, and learn from these remarkable warriors of the faith who changed history and transformed lives for Christ. Join me on this adventure as we unearth secrets of faith in the Celtic lands.
To be a poet, or a bard, or bardd, as we say in Welsh, I think it's to be part of an ancient art form.
It's integrated in the land, it's integrated in my sound, it's integrated in my community, my people. All of that's going to have an effect on the sound that I bring before the Lord.
That He wants to hear your song, your culture, your heart, whatever it is that you have, He wants to hear that reflected in your worship.
Full of hills and valleys that wind round in trills that rally the band of old bardic souls that rest deeply in the wells of every Welsh family.
It's a sound connected to generations and that have led up to this point. But it's a sound of authenticity of who you are.
Rebecca Friedlander, welcome to Faith on Film.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
You bet. You know, I've known you for several years.
Watching that.
Wasn't that just amazing? I've known you for several years now, and I've seen a lot of your work, which has always been amazing. But I got to tell you, this put you in an entirely different level. I mean, this was probably one of the best things I've seen in a long time. What inspired you to do this?
Well, I have a master's in Celtic studies, and basically that's the study of what God was doing in church history, but revival history as well. This amazing piece of what they call the golden age of Celtic Christianity, which was this incredible time during the Irish Church during the Dark Ages. So from about the 400s all the way up to the 7th century, there was some pretty amazing things going on in Ireland, Scotland, and Northern England that spread and kept Christianity and literacy and learning alive during the Dark Ages. So it's a pretty amazing time.
And it wasn't just for, like we mentioned Ireland earlier and Scotland, but Wales was very important. I mean, what I thought was interesting is that the Christianity was first brought to that area before anything else was.
Yes, so it's very interesting. All four of those nations have incredible roots in what we call Celtic Christianity, which was really based on a movement that was happening in Egypt with the Desert Fathers and Mothers. It was kind of a protest movement against worldliness that was creeping into the church after Christianity had become legal and people were no longer being persecuted for their faith. And so some people started to feel like, their faith was just lukewarm and they really wanted more intimate connection with Jesus. And so back then, even in Europe and Africa, they started going out into the wilderness places and seeking God and coming out with pretty extreme testimonies of how God had met them. And that whole movement of the Desert Fathers and Mothers is what spread to the Celtic lands, specifically to Ireland, and a bit of the Scotland area and coastline. And from there, really took off and created its own tribe, if you will, and brand of Christianity that is still pretty inspiring if we look back at some of the stories.
Wow.
Oh, it is. It is. I loved it. I was amazed. You shot this by yourself, didn't you? I mean, did you have a big crew shooting for you with cranes and drones? And it looks like you did.
That would be nice, but no, it was me and my cameras. I got my drone license when I was in the United Kingdom and shot it all with myself, my camera. I had a couple friends pop in here and there, and I'd be like, hold the camera for me and push this button and, hold it steady. They were just really wonderful to do that. But no, it was pretty much my brainchild and project from beginning to end.
Well,
it looks like a big production.
I've known a lot of producers that want to, they have their idea for their great film, and they've been having that idea for years and years. And I'm like, when are you going to produce this? And they always are like, well, I have to get this and that, and I have to get money so I can hire this guy and that guy. And they're still waiting. You didn't do that. You just went out and said, all I need is, I could say that you said, all I need is me, but I guarantee you must have said, all I need is God and the rest will come. Am I correct in that assessment?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a book called Launch Your Vision, which is my 3-step process of writing down your vision and then kind of creating your list of the things that you really need, and then praying into it and watching God show up, all those little steps in the process. And so that's what I do. And it has been absolutely amazing to see God show up. This is my 3rd film on Celtic Christianity, and every single one has miracle stories. And there are moments when I was shooting the first one, Celtic Pilgrimage, I had to stop my camera and pause because the presence of God would fall on the actors as they were filming, and they were just like getting wrecked by the presence of God as we were recreating some of these stories. And so it's just been beautiful to see God show up in ways that only He could do.
Wow. I was impressed with the fact that we tend to think in those days it was the men, who we have hero stories about, but there were women involved too as well.
Absolutely. And I honestly was so compelled by that piece of it. It piqued my curiosity. That was one of the things that really pulled me into this piece of history. The early Celtic church has been called the closest to the first century church in practice and in power. And one of the things that they did was they really pulled a lot from the disciple John, or the apostle John, and his whole practice and teaching was that he ordained women over churches. And of course, it was all home churches back then. But we see from the book of 2 John that it was written to a woman, that he was, encouraging for her to keep order in her group. And so we see this carry over into parts of the early Celtic church. And people like Hilda, who led a huge community of both men and women. She had over 2,000 acres that were given to her to have this community. And it was said that kings came to her for guidance and wisdom. And I think 5 bishops were raised up from her community. She also discovered or found the first English religious poet who was raised up. He was just a shepherd. He took care of the cows. And then one night he had an angel show up and speak to him and start writing, giving him songs. And she pulled him out of leading the cows and, got him into the community. And he wrote, I believe, over 1,000 songs that would help teach people about the Lord, especially when they couldn't read or write. They could sing songs and learn prayers. So there were some amazing, amazing women who were leaders within the Celtic Church.
Now, you just brought something else up that caught my attention when I was watching the documentary itself. You just alluded to it a little bit right now, and that was angels showing up. I think there was about 2 or 3 instances in the documentary where angels showed up. And one of the things that I was that I really admired about what you did is that you made these angels look like warriors, not like your typical, when people use angels in their movies, they're like these kind of, I don't know if I should say this, somewhat effeminate looking guys with, or even ladies with white robes and, feather wings and all this. You made them look like somebody that we should probably be, you made them look like somebody that I would love to have as my guardian angel. Why did you do that?
Well, the stories lend themselves to it, and the scriptures do as well. And so we see warrior angels, coming to fight on behalf of Daniel as he's praying, and, stepping through to help Simon Peter get out of jail. There's really some pretty graphic images in scripture about some of the angels and who they are and what they carry. And we see this in the Celtic Church. So, for instance, St. Senan, who was on the west of Ireland, battled what they called a sea monster who was terrorizing the locals, whether it was an actual sea monster or a demonic power that was over that region. It's said that the angel Michael came and led him to the highest hill where he made the sign of the cross and did battle, and the angel drove away the sea monster. So we reenacted that story in a manner of speaking as we could. And I brought in some warriors, who are trained in sword fighting. And so we kind of were able to reenact that scene. But it's hard to kind of pull the spiritual warfare out of some of these stories because it's so prevalent. And so I just thought we would go with that visual.
Wow. Just for that alone, I'd love to see that scene. Yeah. I was also impressed with the fact that you went on this one area or place where you said once you cross over, the water comes back up, so you can't get back until the tide goes down and it lets you out. That was fascinating to me. What was one of your most favorite or memorable experiences or places you went to film all this?
Well, Lindisfarne Holy Island that you just mentioned is a very special place. And it is a tidal island. And so there's something like 500,000 tourists that come every single year, but there's less than 300 people who actually live on the island because it can be a tough place to live. The road to get in and out of the island is covered with water every 7 hours, and so the tide is in for 7 hours, it's out for 7 hours. That time changes during, it's different every day. So you have to follow a tide chart just to get in and out and get groceries and all of that. But this was one of the places where the early Celtic saints built a community, and it was literally an outpost to train prayer warriors. And it was a pretty special place. So that's one of my favorite places. I love to go to Lindisfarne Holy Island, and that's northeast England.
Oh, wow. Wow. Is it, we hear the stats on how recently, religion's on the decline, faith is on the decline in America. In Europe, it's on the decline. When you go to these places, are the cities and towns around it aware of that? And do you see people still honoring faith, or do you see it kind of dwindling in those areas and change? I'm just curious what the culture is over there, the faith culture in local towns.
Absolutely. It's going to be different everywhere that you go. Certainly, Lindisfarne does have a working chapel and church there. And there are people on the community that have what they call a new monastic community. There's several of them, like the Northumbria community that's there. And so faith is very much alive in some of those places. Other places, you have to do a bit of digging into the history, and people may follow Jesus or go to church, but they may not even be aware of the deep well of rich heritage that is going on right next door to them. So it's different everywhere you go.
Well, yeah. That was a very good question, Holly, because, as I was watching it, I was thinking, wow, is this just something of the past, or is it something that kind of still exists? Or through what you just did, Rebecca, is it something that you hope will inspire it to come back?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great question. The early Celtic church was literally a community. So these were what we call monastic communities. When we say monasticism, most people think of monks with funny haircuts, and living as single people for the rest of their lives. Some of the communities were like that. Others were families who were simply living in community and doing life together to represent Christ to their pagan culture. And so we had all these different kinds of communities, but they would have what they call the rhythm of prayer, which was set times where they would meet for prayer during the day. And they had lots of different tools that they used for prayer, because it was very important to them to connect with the Father. And so one community that I went to see the ruins of, it was 8th century ruins of this Celtic community in Ireland. And literally in the ruins, they have a sundial that's carved into the stones. And instead of the hours of the day marked on the sundial, it's their times of prayer. So they would literally build their whole day around their times for prayer. And when that hour would come, they would probably ring a bell and everybody would come together and pray. And sometimes it was, 7 times a day. There's one community in Ireland that 1,500 years ago, they had 24/7 prayer and worship for at least 150 years, possibly 300. So, these were people who were really called and committed to this deep life of living out the gospel in really practical ways that changed the face of Europe as we know it today.
Who would this your movie be good, or documentary be good for? I know adults will probably enjoy it, but with teens, with kids, who's it for?
Absolutely, anyone. I know some moms who've sat down with their homeschool kids and watched it, because it's a great history lesson. It's very entertaining, keeps people's interest. There's stories all through it. So I don't think there's any age that could be ruled out. I think anyone who either wants to use it as a tool to, educate a younger person, or just delve into that piece of history, I think it's applicable to anyone who wants to go a little bit deeper.
Yeah, I grew up in the church, in the evangelical church, and one of the things that I know we were taught is don't do repetitious prayer. You have to pray from your soul, from whatever, comes out of your own thoughts and everything. And repetitious prayer is not real prayer. But you had touched on that on this thing. And I know one of the people that you were interviewing talked about certain, just doing some of these prayers where you're just basically repeating these prayers. And it just really touched me. And I felt like, there is something, I think, at least I felt it, about sometimes taking these specific prayers and just reciting those specific prayers. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, there's so many different ways to pray. Even when we read the Psalms, there's certain Psalms that are my favorites, and I love to read them out loud. It's somebody else's prayers. I'm using the words that came from the mouth of David and making them my own. So some of the early Celtic saints, they were, in some of their communities, they were required to memorize all 150 Psalms. And they would say them. Sometimes as they were outdoors, they would even stand in the river or stand in the ocean to help them focus and recite what they called the 350s, or the 150 Psalms. And so from that, we have this spiritual depth that kind of comes from that place of identifying with those Psalms and places of Scripture. And really, if you have raw or real prayers that somebody else has said, we've all heard kind of the heart cries of maybe somebody, even on Instagram, you know, or somebody else where you're just like, ooh, I feel that moment of emotional expression. And there's nothing wrong with coming alongside of those things and saying, you know, I'm going to embrace this or adopt this little piece of liturgy and begin to say this and speak. Because really what it is, it's what we would say in the evangelic kind of church, a declaration, you know, speaking out a declaration over our life, or that's really liturgy.
Well,
it's just
and we do it in worship. We do it in worship songs. I mean, we're not singing this song ourselves. We pick songs we love and we just use those. So I got to admit to you, I started to do that after seeing the documentary. I actually started to just do some of the prayers that I know, like even when you know Jesus said, when you pray like this: Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be. I've been praying that prayer, and I tell you, it's really just made an impact in my life.
Well, speaking of community, Rebecca, as well, you have a place where people can actually come and pray and join a community and learn. Talk about what you've done. I think that's incredible.
Yeah.
Well, I'm here from the cabin right now, in the cabin that was left to me by my father a few years ago. And so I came in and renovated the space, and we now have worship meetings here every week. We have an online school. We have a prayer cabin that people come to from all over to spend time with the Lord and pray. It's a beautiful little space. It's been covered with prayer from the foundations up. And we also have a devotional with liturgy prayers that are super helpful from the heart of the Father, as if the Father's actually speaking or reading over his child. So we kind of have our own liturgy book that we use here, and we do a lot of personal ministry here with the team. So people can come and kind of engage, whether it's online or whether it's in person at some of our meetings. But we love the presence of the Lord. And we've kind of adopted from the Celtic saints another term that they used, or they coined the idea of the thin place, which is a place where there was worship and prayer made in that place. And they said the space between heaven and earth was thin, and you could easily hear the voice of God. And that's what we desire to create here at the cabin, and create ways for people to access that.
Where can they go? Where is that? How can people get in touch to find out more about it?
Yeah, you can just hop on my website, which is RebeccaFriedlander.com, and contact me through the site, or look at the prayer cabin. There's a lot of information, a lot of videos, a lot of fun stuff on there that people can connect with and reach out.
Wow.
So what's next for Rebecca Friedlander?
I'm taking a team. We'll see. I'm actually going back to the UK and doing ministry out there, and taking a ministry team that was trained through a school that we did here. And so, it's kind of fun. We're creating practices of prayer that work for us here at the cabin, and then starting to train other teams and give those away. So it's a fun season.
Have you thought about doing what you did for this documentary? Have you thought about doing it in America? Because I would be so interested to see you go back and really find like roots and groups and people that saw angels and people. I mean, that whole thing. I would love to hear those kind of stories, because I know they're here about this founding fathers and about this nation. We don't hear it anymore. There's no one talking about it. There's no movies about it. There's nothing, because everyone's afraid to talk about religion. I don't know. I just would love to see that.
You never know. Anything's a possibility.
Okay, that was a non-committal there.
Maybe you know someone.
But you know what? You're right. You're right, Holly. I think it would be great to see, because a lot of especially our kids, don't really know what this nation was founded on. And we've just forgotten about all that. And I'm sure there must be something there that, because I know this country was founded on principles of God.
Yes.
And I'm sure there would be some great stories out there of all those early beginnings, and maybe you would just kind of inspire us to get back to there's a beautiful song that Andre Crouch wrote years ago called "Take Me Back." I don't know if you remember that song. Take me back, dear Lord. Okay, I need to stop singing. But maybe we need to go back a little bit and just look at our Christian roots within our country.
Yes, and hold on to them because they're disintegrating fast. But well, that's exciting that you're going to go back over to England and the UK and do some things over there. So clearly they love your work.
Yes, absolutely. And one story that does tie in with the U.S., actually, there's a couple of them. There's records of some monks in anywhere from the 6th century to the 8th century that actually came from Ireland to North America. And they're a little sailboat, based on a prophetic word that God had spoken to them and said, there is going to be a land for my people in the future, and I want you to go see this promised land. And so we actually have, in West Virginia, they found some markings from Pictish writings, the language of that time, from Irish monks on this cave in West Virginia. So they actually did come here and kind of claim the ground, if you will, for Christ 1,500 years ago, which is pretty amazing. And then we also see things like the Highland clearances. There were all these revivals in Scotland that were taking place, just a couple hundred years ago. And then many of them had to leave Scotland and came to America because of what we call the Highland clearances, which is a political kind of clearing out of the Highlands. And they were passionate. We see mass revivals of up to 20,000 people that were gathering in Scotland in the Highlands and Islands during that time. And some of them actually came to the United States. And from that heritage, we see like the Second Great Awakening start happening, that actually that they brought that fire with them to the United States. So we have a great deposit, even from this piece of history with the early Celtic saints that has been deposited in America.
I'm so glad you told us that. I love just even knowing that. See, to me, they got a prophetic word that God said he has a land for his people. If my people call me by my name, that scripture then comes to my mind. You know what I mean? It's like, I love knowing that. Wow.
Yeah.
You have just had such an exciting life. I love, exciting life and as a director and producer, and it's not over.
That's right. Well, that's the other thing is I know that you're big on ministry, but you're also a filmmaker. So is this trip going to include filmmaking? I'm assuming so.
I'm not sure at this point. I'm teaching some classes, and so it may be tied in with some further education. But this particular one, I'm not planning on doing another film series, but I'm really looking forward to just connecting again with the people, with the land. And there's a real hunger right now for some of the things that we've been training and teaching people at the cabin. So it's kind of a good cross-pollinating time.
Well, to be honest with you, we certainly would love to see it, but you do what God calls you to do, of course. So once again, where can people watch Celtic Rhythms?
The easiest place is to go to RebeccaFriedlander.com, and you can find all of the links there to one place.
And are you on Facebook and Instagram?
Absolutely.
Okay, so it's the same name on Facebook and Instagram?
Yes. Okay. Just Rebecca Friedlander, you'll find me.
Okay, good. I just didn't know if it was a special company name. Well, it's been a pleasure having you on. Thank you for sharing this beautiful film. I am encouraging my relatives to watch it and you're going to love this. You're going to love it. So, and it's such fun to see something different. And this is really different.
It is. Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, we've run out of time, Holly. We're done with this show, and I'm so glad we had a chance to spend some time with Rebecca. Thank you, Rebecca.
I am too. Thank you, Rebecca. God bless.
Thank you.
Bye-bye now.
Write to us at faithonfilmtv@gmail.com. That's faithonfilmtv@gmail.com. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Faith on Film TV. Also, go to our YouTube channel, Faith on Film TV, and hit the subscribe button and the bell for notifications on our latest Faith on Film shows.